Call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the Community Development Committee of the Metropolitan Council for November 20th, 2023. I'm the chair, Councilmember Robert Lilligren. We are joined by quite a collection of council members, and I believe Councilmember Carter is on her way, so she'll be here shortly. I think that's will be one of the first fully attended CD committee meetings I think I've had the pleasure to chair this year. And just to note that Councilmember Lindstrom will be leaving early after the votes to attend a
tribal
intertribal
state of Minnesota meeting down in Prior Lake.
Great, regarding climate, right? So great, thanks for doing that. Council members, we have an agenda before us. I will note that we would like to cancel the second information item. So we'll scratch that, and then information item number 3 would become information item 2. So if there's no objection to those changes and no objections to the agenda, we will consider it approved. Great, we have an agenda. And then on to our approval of the minutes of the November 6th, 2023 Community Development Committee meeting. Is there a motion? Thank you, Councilmember Wolf. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Lee. Any discussion, additions, corrections? Hearing none, all in approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries, and we'll move on to our non-consent business items. The first is 2023-269. These are the funding recommendations for the 2023 Local Housing Incentives Account, the Homeownership Program, and Ashleigh Johnson is here.
Hey,
Ms. Johnson, welcome.
I don't think I've presented
nice to
in this
see you.
room. Nice to see you too.
Thanks.
Oh, okay. Hi,
Hello.
I'm Ashleigh Johnson. I'm a program manager in the LCA team for the Local Housing Incentives Account, or LHIA. And I'm excited that we are presenting our 2023 Homeownership Program recommendations. Let's hop in. All right, so some background on LHIA is the program was established in 1996 to help communities reach their participating communities reach their housing goals. And it has a baseline and statute of $1.5 million. It requires a dollar for dollar match. So anything that the council puts in is matched by that local community. And we had a homeownership pilot that was launched in 2022, last year. And it was approved as an ongoing program. And this year, it was approved for $2.9 million. Last year, it was for $2 million. So today, I will be talking about the applications that we received, the scores that we got in those applications, and the funding recommendations that we're making today. And then at the back of the business item is a project summary, or the project summaries for all of the applications. So the homeownership program has 2 main priorities. One is geographic choice and the other is racial equity. So the way that we evaluated whether a project is eligible under the geographic choice criteria is if there's a higher than average amount of single family homes, meaning there's a higher opportunity for us to invest in home development or invest in home renovation, or if the median home sales price is more than $25,000 of the regional average. For racial equity, we considered cities that are near or above the regional average in terms of BIPOC population or households. And also, if a city or a census tract has a higher homeownership disparity than the regional average. And this is how scoring looks. So the top 2 bubbles at the top are eligibility related. So just as I mentioned before, geographic choice and racial equity. And as of now, every community in the region or every participating community meets these 2 criteria. Moving on, then we score the applications based on 3 different areas. The homeownership access, how a project team has considered increasing access to homeownership, the unique or contextual needs of that community, and depth and length of affordability. So that, we like to call those our differentiator kind of criteria or categories. So this year, we had 8 applications, half of what we had last year, so a lot more manageable. However, there are larger amounts this year coming in. So those 8 applications are from across the region. We have Golden Valley, St. Paul, 3 projects that applied in Minneapolis, Minnetonka, Edina, and I think I said St. Paul, so 2 in St. Paul. So we are recommending that we fund 5 of those 8 applications. As you can see, Golden Valley, St. Paul, Minneapolis, Minnetonka, and Edina. There were 3 applications that we are not recommending for funding at this time. However, they were very good applications, and we valued their applications. We wish we had the money. And so 30 homes were proposed. You can see the point spread is between 45 and 33. And Refresh Minneapolis was right at that cutoff. So we really have some really good applications this year, and we're so excited that folks are expressing interest in the homeownership program. We had a request of almost $4.2 million for the $2.9 million, which again is a lot better than last year, but we wish we had the money.
Ms. Johnson, when you say better than last year, you mean there's less difference between what we were applied for and what we could fund things?
Yep.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
just
Since
one more
yeah, Councilwoman
clarification on that point.
Johnson.
Do we know why there were half as many this year? Did we get any feedback?
Through the chair, no, we didn't.
Okay.
But that is a good thing that I think we should look into. In terms of the number of homes proposed, interestingly, it's a similar number of homes proposed. It's just a smaller number of applications.
That's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you for that presentation. I'm interested in knowing, from page 3, what were the top cities that met the thresholds for both geographic choice and racial equity? Is there a list or a map?
Yeah, so, through the chair, all of the communities met the eligibility threshold. So all of the applying communities met the threshold to be eligible for the homeownership funding, but they all fell in different ranges in terms of score on the other 3 categories, so the homeownership access.
Councilmember Chambliss.
And
So thanks for that information about the applicants, but I would also, are we able to calculate the list of at least the top cities that would meet the geographic choice threshold of having higher than their higher share of single-family homes or the racial equity?
Yes, we definitely have that information.
Okay.
So there are some communities that would have like a higher base eligible score than others. But depending on the project, it might be better in contextual needs or, more difficult in homeownership access for that particular project or city. What they're proposing could be like, they're doing a really great job in partnerships with homeownership within reach. And the scorer will look at that and be like, oh, wow, that partnership, I'm gonna, that based on the scoring rubric, I'm gonna give that 3 points. And if another applicant was to come in and say, hey, we don't have such partnership yet, but we're looking to establish it. That might not be 3 points, but it might be 2 or 1. So that's how we end up with eligibility scores, and then this differentiation, those like how the applications consider homeownership access, the unique needs of a community, and the depth of affordability.
Okay.
So.
Yep, Councilmember Chambliss. and then
Thank you. One more question, and I just want to make sure that I'm understanding correctly, that there are some elements where a city is putting together a proposal, an application based on their aspirational goals, or based on where they're having certain challenges and they would like to get some assistance to meet the LHIA goals. Is that correct? Or is it?
Would you mind restating the second part of the
So
question?
the second one is, so the first one was, they may be trying to get assistance to meet their aspirational goals.
Right.
Or perhaps they, in the past, they had tried to hit a particular housing segment in their city, for example. And based on that challenge, they're applying for assistance to help them close a particular gap.
Yep. That is spot on.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I have in queue Councilmembers Wolf and then Councilmember Carter. Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When we have grant programs in environmental services, we get a map that says these communities are eligible. I've not seen a map like that for this. Do we have something like that that we can see which cities are eligible to apply? Or is it everybody qualifies under one or the other? Or, you know, how much of the region qualifies? Half, 2/3, a quarter? I mean, that, we've never seen any information like that. So if we could get a map, that would be nice.
Of
Ms.
course.
Johnson?
Through the chair. So in that case, the map would include all participating communities right now. But what could be an interesting map, not me necessarily creating my own work, but what could be an interesting map is the range of the eligibility scores. Like some kind of color differentiation or, you know, seeing which communities may score higher in a racial equity category versus a geographic choice category. So I would be interested in that. And yeah, thank you for.
Thanks, Ms. Johnson. I think from the conversation we had the last few minutes, I think committee members would be interested in that as well. Councilmember Carter.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much for this presentation of what appear to be very promising projects to help us provide affordable home ownership across many areas of the region. I am wondering two things. Let me see if I can get my head on straight to ask these questions. The first question is, and forgive me because I did get into my seat late, if this has already been answered. You mentioned that all 8 of the projects were quite worthy and that you were wishing you had all of the dollars that were required to fulfill them all.
Yeah.
And I do see that the total requested was provided for the first 4 and part of the 5th request. I am wondering if there was any thought given to a different allocation of dollars that may have partially funded more so that others could have been funded, and what your sense is. I know that means that these projects would have to have other dollars and the timing within which the dollars are provided before expiration might be a burden. But I just wonder how you made the decision to make sure to fund all of those. And then I have one more question.
Ms. Johnson.
So through the chair, thank you, council member. We had 3 different scoring kind of ways that we could allocate funding for this application round. And last year, we did decide to set a ceiling of about $400,000 and then distribute it amongst those. We awarded 9 last year, so those 9 projects of the 16. And we noticed moving forward that some of the applications that were partially funded came back this year. So Golden Valley is a repeat applicant, and Edina now has additional homes that is adding into its portfolio. So what we see that's happening is it's almost like fully funding the projects can create a different ability for them to just move forward and not necessarily have to seek that partial funding. So we decided to move forward with this way this year in light of that knowledge.
Thanks. And Councilmember Carter, this is just our second round of doing this. And you had a second question, Councilmember Carter?
I did. And so let me ask, let me ask for a little bit more time to remember my second question.
And then I kind of opened a floodgate of questions when I asked mine, so I apologize, Ms. Johnson. So maybe we'll get through your presentation and then deluge you in more questions.
Thank you, Chair. That was most of the meat, I feel like.
Actually, I know what it was.
Do you want to, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for
Councilmember
allowing
Carter.
me to gather
Yeah.
myself. I wanted to ask the question, and I realize this is the second round. Have we seen projects come in for homeownership at 30% affordability? I didn't see any in this set.
Nope.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Good question.
Through the chair, the lowest that we have seen is 60, targeting 50. And I think that was a Community Lakes, CLCLT, Community of Lakes Land Trust project.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm like, what's all these acronyms?
Yeah, I thought that was 50. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
All right, Councilmember Vento.
Oh, thank you. I thought you changed to that, Ms. Johnson, but okay, I've got them mixed up. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This doesn't have to do with tonight's recommendation, but it does have to do with our housing incentives, and whether it's for homeownership or any kind of, whatever housing developments we have, if we can encourage the developers to remember people with disabilities, I think that's really important. You never know when a disability is going to occur, and to have gotten settled in a new home and to suffer one, but not have main-level living of some sort that is conducive for the whole family can make it difficult to stay there. We have many families where there are multi-generations living together, and for those elders, it can be very difficult. So if whatever we can do to encourage cities and developers and nonprofits to keep that in mind, that would be a good thing. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember. Ms. Johnson.
All right.
Oh, I did, you're talking to her.
Right.
Yeah, I was mixed.
Yes,
Yeah, all right.
Sorry.
All right.
I'm good
It's a
now.
fairly common name.
Thanks for
in this
checking in,
state.
everybody.
I'm dangerous.
Ms.
I
Ashleigh
felt so
Johnson.
loved.
So these are our 5 recommendations. So we are recommending to fund 19 homes with $2.9 million for applications with the city of Edina, Minnetonka, Golden Valley, the city of Minneapolis, and in the city of St. Paul, but in partnership with the St. Paul Port Authority. So I'll pause here, and then we can hop into or go through the 5 projects that we're deciding.
Ready to go through the projects? Yep, let's do that.
All right. So the first one is the City of Edina, their Affordable Ownership Preservation Program. I chose these images because Stephanie Hawkinson at the City of Edina really expressed in her application process how well their homeownership program is going in terms of reaching out to homeowners and saying, hey, would you like to sell your house to the city instead of, tearing it down, which is what a lot of folks are doing in areas of the region, tearing down homes and building bigger ones on lots. So that program seems to be going very, very well. And this particular proposal is a partnership between the City of Edina, Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity, and Homes Within Reach. This is a preservation application, so they'll be looking for existing homes and renovating and selling them affordably. We are recommending them for 2 homes, and they are looking to fund between 50% and 80% of AMI. And then the City of Edina will be matching those funds. And again, the anticipated use of funds is for that acquisition and rehabbing those homes. The second is in the City of Minnetonka. Again, they are a returning applicant for this twin home project. We are recommending full funding to fund those 2 homes at 80% of AMI to fund construction costs. And on the right is an example of a twin home. And on the left is a project that was completed in Minnetonka a few years ago, relatively recently. So the third project is with the City of Golden Valley. It is a partnership between Magnolia Homes and GMHC, or the Greater Metropolitan Housing Corporation. We are recommending 6 homes with the City of Golden Valley at an AMI of 60%. And this is for new housing development. So as you can see, the conceptual drawings here are shared from the City of Golden Valley of what they might look like. And Golden Valley is coming back. I think we funded them for 5 homes last year. So they're just churning them out.
One moment, Councilmember Chambliss.
Okay, so for the Golden Valley homes, the GMHC, are those, looks like they're multifamily homes or townhouses, or can you, just looking at the pictures, they look like
Twin
they're not
homes.
single family.
Twin homes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, twin homes. And we're so excited to see an application from Magnolia Homes come through. Alex Frank has been a really great partner in terms of building the pilot and giving some of his advice on how to structure our application process. So yeah, I'm so excited to see this application.
Councilmember Chambliss.
So how does the funding work for the twin homes? Is it matched for both that are, adjacent to each other, or is the allocation for each twin?
Yeah, through the chair, each home is treated like a separate home on its own parcel.
Okay, all right.
Yep, thank you. Ashleigh.
Next is PPL Greenbelt Homes. We have put money into this project previously in 2020. We are now recommending 5 homes to finish the PPL Greenbelt Home project. We are so excited for this. This has been going on for a long time. The PPL has been a great partner. These homes are in North Minneapolis, and they are a part of a larger development project. As you can see, the other homes, they're thinking about the context of the neighborhood, and also they have some multifamily developments around the area. So this will be affordable at 80% of AMI for 5 homes.
Councilmember Chambliss.
I feel like I have a lot of questions, but I'm wondering about the lot size. They seem quite narrow. And I'm just wondering how that helps with affordability, and what the square footage might be of the homes.
Yeah, through the chair. That is a very good question. And I could look up what the square footage is and the lot uses. The city of Minneapolis has been doing a really good job with, smaller lots and putting lots of units in them with their zoning code. But I will look that up and let you know.
Yeah, I'd be interested because I really like the concept of, the tinier homes and how that can help with affordability.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
I'll just note again, this is, I don't know if this is just a concept drawing because it's not to scale or anything, but what I do like seeing is that they've got garages that go with them. And that's important for people and some green space too. So, and then it looks like they're fitting within the character of the overall neighborhood. So good to see those go up.
Through the chair, I wanted to add, so in their application, they said that they're looking to construct 5 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom with unfinished basements on 7 existing lots along 6th Street. And the existing lots have been replated to create the 5 needed for the development, and each unit will have its own patio, deck, backyard, detached garage, and rain garden. I will also note that this is the largest group of applicants that have considered sustainability that I've seen in a very interesting way.
Good to know.
So,
Thank you.
and lastly, we have our application from the St. Paul Port Authority for Serenity Townhomes. So this is a development team with Amani Construction, Rondo Community Land Trust, and from land from the Port Authority. So they have acquired, or they yes, they have acquired land from the Port Authority to do this project, and that is what they are using to consider their match, which is really cool. Previously, we only partnered with the Port Authority on TBRA projects, so really excited to kind of mend that gap. So we're recommending 4 homes at an AMI of 80% for construction costs. And Amani Construction is a wonderful, wonderful mother-daughter duo that I'm grateful that I got to work with. So rounding it out, we ask that the Metropolitan Council award 5 LHIA grants totaling $2.9 million, and that the council authorize its executive director of community development to execute the grant agreements on behalf of the council.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Okay, we have a motion in before us. We can get a second and have discussion. Okay, great. And a second. Thank you, Councilmembers Lee and Vento. Discussion.
Chair, I missed who initially motioned.
Councilmember Lee.
Thank you very much.
And discussion, yeah, Councilmember Johnson, then Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for all your hard work on this, Ashleigh. And I do think it would be great to see in the map, so I think we know that we're getting that. And, you know, again, to just, if there's any way we can find out why other cities that would have been eligible, or partners out there with cities that would have been eligible, didn't move forward. If there's any way to do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was looking at the Minnetonka project, and with a 1-to-1 match, you're looking at $1.5 million for a twin home, which seems like an awful lot of money. I mean, that would make a lot more houses in some of these other projects that we didn't fund. And I guess, I mean, if they met the rules, they met the rules, but we may want to reconsider that, because that's not even all of the money. There would also be whatever the person qualifies for as a mortgage on top of that for 2 families. That's, you could buy 3 of my house for one of those townhouses. And I think we might want to have a smaller limit per unit next time, so that we can get more units rather than having a monster development that's only going to help 2 families.
Thanks. And I know that's on us too, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we've emphasized geographic choice, and so maybe there's a way of tempering that, and so.
But I think there's probably ways to get into communities that are harder to get into without a subsidy of, you know, $75,000 or $750,000 per unit. There's got to be someplace that you can get the choice without that huge price tag, is what I'm saying.
Thank you. Thanks. And Councilmember Chambliss.
Well, I was just curious about the units that are not working with a community organization like PPL and some of the others. So anybody could request that house, like, for example, Minnetonka, and they would be getting a big discount. Is that correct? I mean, I know that some of the other programs have, you know, they interview and I don't know how it's competitive or how they select, but it's in the open market for, if it's not under a community organization. Is that correct?
Ms. Johnson.
Yeah, through the chair. So in the applications, each team will share how they plan to market the homes, whether there is a wait list or of like homeowners that they already have, or whether or not they have like, they service BIPOC households at a higher rate. So one way that we look at that or consider that is the scoring criteria. So a project that lists the partnerships, has a wait list of households already, you know, ready to go. They have a proven track record of BIPOC homeownership. So each of these applications shared, you know, the percentage over the last, I think it's maybe 5 years or so, of how many BIPOC households they've serviced or provided services to. So we look at that and we consider that, and there is a large range, but it seems as if like Rondo Community Land Trust, CLCLT, Homes Within Reach, these types of groups, you're right, they do have a demonstrated track record and those strong relationships. So we are trying to get to that with the scoring criteria to differentiate, but you raise a very, very good point of something that we should investigate and look into in terms of how those that don't have those partnerships would market. But as of yet, I feel as if we haven't met that challenge spot on, but it is something that we do need to look out for.
Yeah, I think that kind of ties into what Councilmember Wolf was saying as well, because we want to have an incentive to make sure that, you know, those that are looking and have demonstrated need for affordability benefit from the grants versus, oh, this is a great deal, so let me jump on this because I'm going to get a big discount. And then, you know, if it's going to be, it may have more of an impact on the geographic criteria, I'm not sure, but something to maybe think about.
Great, thank you. And then also how we sustain long-term affordability. That'll be interesting. So I have in queue Councilmembers Vento, Wolf, then Johnson. Councilmember Vento.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't dozing off, I was working on my
You
question.
look kind of startled that I had called out.
It's been a Monday. What requirements are there for the developer and the future homeowner in terms of keeping the home within the terms of this grant agreement?
Ms. Johnson?
Yeah.
Does that question make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
How do you
Through the chair, so one of the questions that we ask in the application is about how will you keep this home affordable? So we require at least 15 years, which is secured by, most of these applications, secured by another funding sources restrictions. So, you know, they receive money from the city that has like CDBG funds in it that requires that they keep it affordable for 15 years. Those are the most of the applications that are coming through.
Mr.
Councilmember
Chair,
Vento, yeah.
I will vote in favor of this motion tonight, but I do have to second what I've heard previously about the Minnetonka project. The cost of those homes really troubles me. I couldn't afford one of them. And at no point in my life would I have been able to afford one of them. And frankly, I wouldn't have wanted to have been able to afford one of them because I just think it's such an astronomical amount. And how somebody at 80% AMI can afford one kind of leaves me really in doubt about it, but.
Thank you. I have in queue Councilmembers Wolf, Johnson, and Dolkar. Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you have more details on the affordability piece? Because if it's only 15 years for these, we're really wasting taxpayer dollars. I was assuming that they were all land trust sort of things that would be affordable indefinitely, but I'd really like to hear more on each one, how long they are affordable and how.
Oh, yeah. So through the chair, most of these are perpetually affordable, just like last year. So let me see. Project. So I don't have in this presentation like the spreadsheet of whether it's 15 or whether it's 30 or whether it's perpetual, which is typically the buckets that a project will fall into. But that's a good thing to illustrate. And I will put that together and share it with the council. Because I think the range of the years of affordability, we definitely know is 15. at least. And we know that for those that have a land trust partner, that they're perpetually affordable. Some of these are also going into a land trust, like the City of Edina project. So even though they might not have a partnership listed here, it seems as if they have a land trust component to what they're proposing. So I will take that out. And
Thanks.
yeah.
Thank you. And Councilmember Wolf?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am not comfortable approving this today without that information. So I guess I'd like to hear from other members, but if we don't know that they're perpetually affordable, I would table this till our next meeting.
Okay. Comment from the Director Barajas.
Mr. Chair, thank you, council members. It is very rare that our affordable housing projects are guaranteed to be perpetually affordable. Land trusts are, I think, even on a 99-year lease, which seems like a long time.
That's essentially what I meant.
But even through our consolidated RFP with Minnesota Housing, the minimum is a 15-year, or and sometimes we see 20 years come up. And there have been projects over the years where we are, where the council has granted funds to help refinance those and continue that affordability going forward. So that 15 and 20 years is a pretty standard timeframe for affordability for not just single family or home ownership opportunity, but also for rental.
Councilmember Wolf?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And that is one of the dysfunctional things about some of our affordable housing stuff. I know in Dakota County, they not only develop them, but are the owners typically in the projects, the rental projects, so that when your tax credits run out, you can give it tax credits again and continue the affordability without basically buying an asset for somebody else. Because if this stops being affordable and whatever entity suddenly gets the full price of the thing with no obligation to keep it affordable, we're basically just handing money to organizations. So it's just taking a little while to get there.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councilmember Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think one of the things, too, I'd like to see in this is what is the total estimated market value at the time it is completed? And I would also like to see what the total costs, all encompassing, are into each unit or into the project. So what I'm trying to find out is how much money has gone in, not just on the government side, but in total, because just even, doing some quick math here on the subsidy, again, as noted, some of these are pretty expensive. So, and from having done this for 20-some years at the City of Plymouth through our HRA, we decided not to go through the land trust route. However, there would be land trusts that would come in and work with Plymouth. I just have to say, it's such a problem, we have to do something, but it really also can be very limiting to a family that down the road needs to move. Job change, something with their ability, death, whatever, and they're stuck. They don't get to take their equity with them when they move. And we had a case where we actually let the person out of the agreement, and we couldn't keep it affordable because it ended up being too encumbering for the people who live there. So, there's no perfect solution, but I do think that, having the map, having the total market value when it's done, having the total investment, both government and private, is important, because if you're just a person also looking out there, a housing advocate or anybody, are we paying more than I think Councilmember Wolf and others might be getting at, then you could just go out in the open market and, purchase a home.
Okay, I have in queue Councilmembers Dolkar, Chambas, and Bento. And Ms. Johnson, just to kind of add to the list of numbers that Councilmember Johnson just asked for the total investment, total project cost. Also, the projected or proposed sales price, I think would be helpful as well. Because I have a hunch that we're not looking at $1.5 million homes in Minnetonka if it's being targeted at 80%. So there's obviously we're writing down some of that, and I don't think that's a bad use of public dollars.
And I think, Mr. Chair, if I may, that was my point. I'm just trying to see, you know, what somebody is able to purchase it at, but what subsidy is having to go into it.
I agree with you, and I think you need the context of sales price as well.
Yeah.
To make those relevant. So, yeah, no, and this is, again, second year, we're learning, and so we're figuring out how we want to see these. So I think this is a very helpful conversation. Councilmember Dolkar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And that was my clarifying question. I assumed when I saw 2 houses, like it's actually 2 houses, and so then it's twin homes, and so I'm thinking it's 4 units? Is that not?
No.
Or we're 1 home, 2 units? Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Since I'm new,
Please.
I don't know what the procedure is for, you know, the option to abstain, because I've always seen yay or nay. So I would like that option for the voting today.
Yep. So you have the option, you know, when I call for the vote, before it, against it, or abstain.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
You always have that option, Councilmember Dolkar.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Councilmember Johnson. A
Not
point
to
of
get too
order.
parliamentarian, but I think only an abstention typically under Robert's rules is if there's a conflict. And if you do not vote verbally, it goes to the affirmative side, a yes vote.
Okay, we don't
And I
have
think
a-
it's
yeah.
really to prevent people from not wanting to vote on things that
Yep.
they so I appreciate your sentiments, but
So since
could
we
all sit here
don't
and
have
not
a
vote.
parliamentarian in the room, and many of us have a lot of experience, I've never been in a situation where someone had to disclose why they abstained. If you have a conflict, you have to disclose that and abstain. But I've never seen it, so we just disagree. So I'm the chair of this committee, and I'm going to use my awesome authority to say, Councilmember Dolkar, you can abstain for whatever reason that you like. And then we can clarify this going forward.
I'd appreciate that, Mr. Chair. Otherwise, we could all do that and get nowhere.
Right. So further discussion, Councilmember Chambliss and Councilmember Vento. Councilmember Chambliss.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that I like all the questions. I don't think we necessarily have to have them all answered before we proceed, but if we had asked upfront for an estimate of the, like, sales price or an estimate of the cost to build, those are perfectly good questions going forward, and this is a learning process, so
Agreed.
I think having these conversations are very valuable, or at least tracking, you know, after the award, what was the cost to build? What was the sales price? Because you're not going to know what the sales price is until afterwards anyway. But certainly tracking that would be very valuable.
Agree. And I do find this conversation really valuable for those reasons that you stated so well, Councilmember Chambliss. Further discussion, Councilmember Vento.
This isn't a question, and it's not anything that any research needs to be done on at this point, but I think something that we may also want to consider is with more expensive housing comes higher property taxes, and as well, higher insurance costs. And that's going to be a factor for people regardless of what their income level is. So I think we need to take that into consideration when we're looking at the grants in the future.
Thank you. I see Ms. Berkey kind of lurking in the background. I didn't know if she wanted to say something, or can we? Yeah, go ahead. Ms. Berkey, welcome.
Yeah, hi, Sarah Berkey, Senior Manager for LCA and Housing. And I just wanted to add, I think this is a great discussion, and with affordable homeownership, there are at least 3 numbers you might be interested in. I just wanted to kind of clarify what you want to see in the future. One is kind of total development cost of the property, and whether that includes land or not, and recognizing that land value in some of these communities is just inherently a lot higher. So that's part of what you're seeing in the gap there that this covers for, say, Minnetonka. So total development cost. Then there's sales price, which typically you want at the market value. And then there's the cost to the end buyer, which is usually lower because you structure some of the assistance to the individual, some to the development if there's a gap between the market value and the development cost. And so there's probably at least 3 numbers. Just for our future purposes, is it helpful to get all of those or, you know? Okay,
I think that's what we were asking for.
great.
It would be helpful, and especially when we see them at this level, it's hard to recognize what those other instruments or tools of affordability might be that impact, you know, and show us better what our leveraged investment is. Yeah, Councilmember
Mr. Chair,
Johnson.
thank you. And just one other number, it'd be interesting to see what the taxable market value would be. And I don't know, in some of these communities, that's a lot of money too on the, what would be the actual value of the home and not the sale price. And I'm not sure if there's then some help and subsidy on that as well. But I'd like to know how that works in many communities, probably all of our communities anymore. It's just something that goes to affordability. So I don't know if that is somehow worked through the assessment process. I don't think so, but I'd like to know how that is handled for the owner.
Well, Ms. Berkey, did you want to respond?
Yeah, Chair Lilligren and Councilmember Johnson, I think typically you'll see a homeownership developer in a program like this working with a partner to underwrite the buyer. And so when we say 80% AMI limit or whatever, it would be based on what the person could afford at that limit and making sure that all the different sources and layers of subsidy add up properly. And looking at taxes would be part of that calculation and underwriting, certainly.
Great, cool. All right, any further discussion on the motion? Councilmember?
Table?
No, there wasn't a motion to table. Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would make a motion to table this until the next meeting so that we could get the rest of the information.
I'll second.
Is there a second? Okay. Thank you. Discussion on the motion? Councilmember Chambliss.
So I'm thinking we need to have more clarity on what that motion is. I mean, because there were a lot of requests. Can I request that, Wendy?
So it's a motion to table to the next committee meeting, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so that would give us between now and then, which is December 4th? Between now and December 4th to get some of this information back to
Okay,
us.
okay,
And Mr.
as
Chair,
much as we can get.
Councilmember Johnson?
just a point of clarification, some of this information are all of the various numbers that we have asked for. I think that's what people are
That's
asking.
what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you,
So
Councilmember Johnson.
I said as much as we can get, as much as is feasible.
Right.
And to be
Councilmember Wolf, on your motion.
full disclosure, I won't be here because I'm on vacation. So I'm going to have to trust the rest of you to make sure that we get all the information that we need. But if we're going to vote today, I'd have to vote no because I don't feel like I have enough information.
So I'm just gonna opine on sort of what we're looking for. I would be surprised if we can get all the information, maybe Ms. Burke or Ms. Johnson can counter that. We get more information than we have now, and if that's what committee members need to have comfort to move forward, you know, we can do that. But I don't want to set up an expectation that we're gonna get every bit of information that we just talked about by December 4th. Councilmember Vento.
So as not to pinpoint and focus on any one of the 5 proposed grants, I'll do a hypothetical. Let's say there's a 6th grant, and the recommendation is for 3 units at, well, whatever, it would be $800,000 apiece. What happens to the grant money if none of those homes sell ultimately?
Does either Ms. Johnson or Ms. Berkey have a response for that? And I see Councilmember Johnson is requesting.
This is usually a non-debatable motion, and
Okay, I'm
we have to,
sorry.
no, but we also have to stay germane to the motion.
Agree, thanks for that.
I'll ask
And I
it
know we're
afterwards.
playing a
Sorry,
little
and
fast
with
and loose.
all respect
The
to everybody.
rules.
Thank you, Madam
Yeah.
Parliamentarian.
Yeah, and we have veered off a few times today, but
I
I
mayored for a long
figured
time.
it's just as well to have the conversation. So with the understanding that we're not expecting all of the information to postpone this, I'm happy to support the motion to postpone out of courtesy. I plan, just to be really clear, we're going to vote on this at the next meeting, so whatever, so just to be very clear about that, so, all right?
Mr. Chair.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you. And do we know, will this cause a problem for any of the people or entities that are applying?
I had already asked Director Barajas about the impact of delay. I don't know if you wanted to.
Mr. Chair, council members, we usually enter into grant agreements after your action is taken in the kind of following quarter, given the holidays. Most of those probably won't circulate until for my signature at least, in execution until at the earliest, the beginning of the next, or the beginning of the second quarter.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. I would say that being said, we do like to close these out before we get into your next round of fund distribution and discussions there to kind of make our conversations cleaner as well.
Right, and I'm guessing we're going to have a very informed conversation about the next round as we set criteria and funding amounts. Final word on the motion, Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The reason I said for the next meeting is it still gets it in time for the December 13th council meeting, so ultimately there is no delay.
Oh, so the same weekend. Cool. All right, on the motion to table, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Not on this.
That carries unanimously. Well done.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Councilmember Vento.
I want to ask that question I just asked.
Can we pause that? Because we're going to have plenty of opportunities to have discussions about okay, let's answer the question.
Well, I don't.
Let's answer it.
I
Okay.
don't know that I need an answer, but if we're going to vote on December 4th
Right.
on maybe one of these projects is very, very expensive, the question is, what happens if it doesn't sell?
Okay, what,
And that answer can be brought to the December 4th meeting.
okay.
I want to make sure that we have that
Do you
information.
have something to say? Councilman Director Barajas, I sense you want to say something.
Mr. Chair, council members, the council funds construction costs. So the building would get built, and then I don't know that we've encountered a building that never sells. Everything sells eventually. There's a lot of infrastructure around these buildings to move towards that sale or move towards occupancy, as Sarah was talking about, working with potential buyers and the layers of subsidy that go into purchase. Like, the programs are set up to move to that.
Okay, so my question is, if it doesn't meet this criteria and it's ultimately sold to someone at market rate, someone who is way beyond 80% AMI, do we get that money back?
Mr. Chair,
Dr. Barajas.
council members, thank you. The grant agreement would require that they're selling at that no greater than 80% AMI, if that's the level they said. So they have to meet those levels. If they don't meet those levels, then they're in violation of our grants agreements and would need to relinquish their funds back to the council.
Okay, that's what, okay,
Okay,
got it.
does that answer your question,
Yep.
Councilmember Vento? Great.
Or seek an amendment, which you could say yea or nay to.
Right, and we've seen those here, right? We have seen those kinds of amendments.
Sorry.
No apology, not necessary. Okay, cool. Moving on to our second non-consent business item for the evening. It's item 2023-268. It's adoption of payment standards for our Metro HRA rent assistance programs. We've had a little introduction to this already, so Ms. Smith is here to present.
Yes,
Welcome,
good
Terri.
afternoon, Mr. Chair and council members. I'm Terri Smith, the director of the council's HRA, following up from a November 7th lengthy discussion we had on payment standards. And so today I have a much more abbreviated action item for your consideration, and hope that I have heard what you said and the action speaks to that. So today I'm here to present an action item on payment standards for the rent assistance programs in the Metro HRA. As a little bit of a review, payment standards are rent limits. So this is the shopping power, the dollar amount that voucher holders have when they're out shopping for a rental unit to use their voucher. These are limited by fair market rents, which were recently issued by HUD. I think the message on this slide is, I explained at the last meeting, that these are higher increases than I've ever seen, and the small area fair market rents increased from 11 to 18% in most Metro HRA communities. My colleague, Joel Hudding, shared some information on the rental market and what's happening in the rental market, so he had several slides. But in summary, rents continue to rise and continue to rise faster in metro HRA communities compared to the broader region, that larger units are rising faster than smaller units, and that housing cost burden is nearly 80% for renters with incomes less than $58,000 a year. So just brief review, what are small area fair market rents? There was a final rule published by HUD back in 2016 that allowed for housing authorities to adopt rent limits or payment standards at the zip code level versus one limit for the entire metropolitan area. But the whole initiative was to improve choice in low poverty areas for voucher holders around the country. Today, there are 263 housing authorities utilizing small area fair market rents. And those are, for the most part, housing authorities that are mandated by HUD to use these small area fair market rents due to a large concentration of voucher holders in high poverty areas. So as you will recall, the Metro HRA adopted these small area fair market rents back in 2020, and we're recommending the same again this year. When we're considering payment standards, and you've seen this slide, I think, couple years in a row, and I dug into this a little bit at the last meeting, but the HUD rule is essentially, here's your money, council, now go out and serve as many voucher holders as you can. If we adopt higher rent standards or higher rent limits, that results in higher average subsidy costs, so we could potentially serve less families, but also increases voucher placement success, meaning people that have vouchers, households that have vouchers should be able to use them. Lower rent limits have lower average subsidies, so we could potentially serve more families, and our budget could go further, but families with vouchers may have a hard time finding rental units with their voucher. I went through 3 options in detail with you all at the last minute, at the last meeting. It was quite lengthy, longer than a minute. But option was to make minimal changes that were required to make to come within the required federal range of adopting payment standards between 90% and 110% of the new small area fair market rents. Option 2 was sort of a re-benchmarking of sorts to adjust all the payment standards to a flat 100% of the new small area fair market rents. And then option 3 was to make changes based on market conditions and average rents. Options 2 and 3 had a larger price tag than option 1, but reduced future rent burden much more than option 1, meaning the percentage of voucher holders that are paying more than 30% of their income towards rent. So after discussion, I'm back today to recommend option 3. So adopting payment standards between 98% and 110% of the small area fair market rents. That allows us to make some adjustments due to our local market knowledge and average rents and supplement the HUD data that we get. It improves locational choice for voucher holders. It will increase voucher placement success, so voucher holders that have vouchers will increase the chance that they can use them. And this is the option that had the vocal support of the Community Development Committee on November 7th, and then prior to that, the Housing Work Group. Here's the timeline and review. So I was before you, I think it was November 7th. Or was it November 6th? I was on vacation last week, so November 6th or 7th.
Time means nothing to you.
That's what you get.
Yeah, right? I lost track. Today I'm here before you with an action item that we hope will be approved by, on December 13th by the council, and then we will implement the new standards in early 2023. So the action before you tonight, Mr. Chair and council members, is that the Metropolitan Council adopt payment standards as shown in Table 2 in the business item for the Housing Choice Voucher and other rent assistance programs effective next year, January 1st, 2024. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Ms. Smith, for your work and for the presentation last week. All the data was just really fascinating to see and really helpful in making, helping us make an informed decision. Discussion on that report. First, Councilmember Johnson, then Councilmember Chambliss.
Mr. Chair, I would move the recommendation before us.
Thank you. Is there a second? Great. Thank you, Councilmembers Johnson, Councilmember Lee. Discussion, Councilmember Chambliss.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm understanding the next steps as compared to the proposed action. It says February through April 2023. Implement,
2024.
you mean 2024?
Oh.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember
That's
Chambliss,
Chambliss.
yes, 2024. So they're effective the first of the year, but because of our timeline of when we do recertifications and get new paperwork for new lease ups, we won't implement until February for new admissions and then April 2024 for new actions. So I apologize for the typo.
Okay, that answers that second question that I was going to ask. Why was it February instead of January? Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks for the question. Good catch. Councilwoman Thomas. Further discussion on the motion? Discussion. Hearing none, all in approval, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. Very, very well-managed conversation. Moving on to our information items, I'll remind committee members, we have cut item 2, the 2050 land use item. So we now have 2 items of information. The first is the 2050 Regional Development Guide Housing Policy Plan Update, and Hilary Lovelace is here to present. Welcome.
Thank you. It's going to take me a second to.
Oh, that's right. There was some technology stuff today. Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While we're waiting for you to get set up, we did not get the presentation ahead of time on our agendas, and I just wanted to remind staff that that is very challenging for us to have to
Agreed.
just react at the last minute without being able to see the information ahead of time.
Thank you for that note. Ms. Lovelace.
I appreciate that, thank you. Fortunately, today it'll be quick, short, and sweet. You guys can all see the presentation right now.
Correct.
Okay, great. So I'm Hilary Lovelace. I'm a housing policy planning analyst working on the housing policy plan as part of Imagine 2050. And today I'm here to give you a quick update on what we've been doing in the last 3 months since we last presented to Committee of the Whole in August. I guess that's more than 3 months. Ask you a couple of questions about our engagement findings and what you'd like us to ask technical experts on our technical advisory group. So we'll do a quick project timeline, a little bit about engagement findings, and then I have some questions for you. As a quick refresh, the Metropolitan Council has a unique role in government. The housing policy plan is our biggest policy tool that we have as part of this, but there are other levels of government that have other authorities within this. We can't control everything, but the housing policy plan is very much in our lane. We also, the housing policy plan can provide some direction for funding priority in the future. The housing policy plan sets the tone for how we talk about housing within our region. I think during the 2040 Regional Development Guide, the housing policy plan really changed the conversation on thinking about bands of AMI and how to prioritize those things. The housing policy plan also has 3 kind of key housing policies included within it. The affordable housing need, which is set for the entire region and then allocated to each specific community within our region that receives sewer service and has expected household growth within the decade. We have affordability standards. How do we set affordability standards right now? We're using the low-income housing tax credit standard. Minnesota Housing calculates it the exact same way. I think that regionally, the conversation around area median income has been growing more and more, both with an understanding of what it does mean and also some discontent around the fact that it doesn't respond to realities of low-income families within our region. And the last kind of like key housing policy I want to highlight is just one of the many authorities that we have within the comprehensive plan review process. And that is land guided for affordable housing, making sure that each community has the capacity to possibly build enough affordable units to meet their need in the next decade. In our housing policy plan project timeline, we have finished with initiation. We are wrapping up engagement that we're doing specifically for the housing policy plan. We have conducted engagement of staff and of residents in every council member district and county within the 7-county region, which was a huge accomplishment on our part. And that's just for housing. We'll still obviously be listening in to ongoing engagement that other policy areas are doing across the region. We just aren't, as housing staff, promoting any of our own future events. We'll be hopefully providing you with a draft plan ready to read by April 1st. And we're following along with the general timeline for the adoption of the entire regional development guide. As another kind of reminder of our engagement approach, we had one online issue survey which received a lot of responses. The affordability limits webpage of our website is one of the most frequently visited web pages on our website. We got, I think, more than 80 complete surveys on there and many more partial. We asked everybody kind of who they were, you know, along the lines of like, are you a developer? Are you an affordable housing advocate? Are you a resident of affordable housing? Are you city staff? Are you an elected official somewhere within the region? And followed up with a handful of one-on-one interviews with people who denoted that they wanted a follow-up conversation. We are currently in the process of finalizing that information together, all of the qualitative information into a memo. We have begun our work with the technical advisory group, which we asked many of these members to participate in community exchange sessions so they would have fresh on their minds the experience of residents within our region. These are regional thinking experts in our field. We'll talk a little bit more about who's on the tag in a few more slides. And we completed, I think, 15 community exchange sessions across the region, spanning from families with young children to elders in our community. Again, this is kind of another reminder slide. We're thinking about the resident experience in housing policy and how housing affordability is mostly at the core of that. There are influences that we normally have thought about in our work at the council that drive what causes housing affordability, and then there are impacts of housing and affordability, something we've thought less about kind of in the history of the council as part of our responsibility, is what happens when people are left without affordable housing for a very long time. We, within our technical advisory group, have a bunch of city and county staff from around the region, green building experts, some planning consultants, a couple of developers, both of market rate and affordable housing, advocates, public housing staff, planners, architects, and designers from many different areas and fields gathered together. So far, we've met twice. Mostly orienting them to how the Metropolitan Council works, what the history of the Metropolitan Council is. And we were also very careful to select within this group a range of experiences and personal identities. So we have some sort of earlier and mid-career professionals as well as some well-known leaders in the affordable housing space. Part of the reason for that is we want to make sure that we have some succession. It was hard looking at the list of people who were in advisory groups last time, trying to find somebody who's still working in this space. So we have lots of different perspectives kind of coming forward from that. Later, I'm going to ask you if there's anything really specific you would like to learn from this group. They will be providing insight on what they think the focus of our housing policies should be, and I will definitely bring that back. But if there's any specific item that you'd kind of like to ask a broad regional thinking group of experts, I would love to know.
Ms. Lovelace, question from Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, just two quick questions. I raised this issue in the transportation and transit policy work group at our last get-together doing community engagement. I think for council, maybe I'm speaking just for myself certainly, but for others on that body, if there's a way to let us know if you're in our district, that'd be great too. If there's an opportunity to sit in or listen in, it's just very good for us to know who you're meeting with, just to be supportive and then just kind of absorb things along the way. And then, are these meetings virtual, or can anybody attend these? Just in case any of us would want to listen in, I just know that procurement put some really great virtual meetings out as we were trying to get minority-owned and DBE and MCUB businesses in, and I listened in to one of those, and it's just, again, a great opportunity for policymakers to kind of just hear first person, I guess, how the process is going, because I know this is a lot of work. And then, if there are people in our districts that are part of this group or any of your engagement in the past, I just like to always know when the council, to the best of our ability, is kind of out and about. So I can, when I show up at places, I don't find out things kind of on the back end. I can be a little more proactive with them.
Excellent point. And there was a couple questions there, Ms. Lovelace. Do you have response or, cool, please.
Chair, Councilmember Johnson, all of our public events, we post through the weekly report that comes out of communications about what community engagement and relationships are going on. Do you guys also get that report? No?
I don't think
No.
so.
I think
That's distributed any longer.
Yeah, I've
Never
not seen
mind.
something like that. I just, and Mr. Chair, if I may, I've only served in my time here, but I just know that my former Met Council rep seemed to know when Met Council was doing stuff in the district, and she would be there often, and that was just great, because I thought, wow, look at that. So just would like to be able to
I
do
think that's
that.
such a great suggestion. This might be something we want to do as we get new support staff on this side as well. That could be, I agree with you. I think those are excellent points. Was that, okay, so I have in queue council members Carter and then Bento. Councilmember Carter.
Thank you. I appreciate your stopping at this point, because without the slides in front of us, can't go back and check. I believe that in the first slide, you were sharing the community or resident engagement that has been done. And I'm thankful for the work that's been done there. I know that by April, I think it is, you're going to be coming back to us with some drafting. And between then and April, you've got the technical advisory groups coming together. And all of that is excellent, because you're going to be able to take the feedback that you've received and think through and get more feedback and build forward, and then that drafting happens. My concern, and you may already have handled this, is that often when we've been in session with residents and have collected their input, which then goes into plan, they don't see it again until they see the plan. And have not had the chance to validate it, go, yeah, you got what I said, yes, or you missed this, before somebody else takes it and moves it forward. Sometimes when they get it back, it doesn't look like what they thought they said and heard in the resident engagement phase. So I'm wondering if there is an opportunity, together with the thank you, to share back with residents some kind of summary of what was said in the input session, what was gathered, and perhaps what conclusions are going into that drafting. I know that's an extra step, and again, perhaps you've already been thinking through it, but I would want us to avoid that, oh, you didn't get it at all, step that sometimes happens in that process.
Thank you. Ms. Lovelace.
Chair, Councilmember Carter, thank you so much for that comment. I really appreciate it. We definitely can go back to some of the residents that we've talked with and engaged with so far. I actually recently made a call back to somebody that I talked to on the phone for half an hour, just to give them an update of what we're doing. One of the things that we're trying to do to validate and make sure that this all comes through in the plan will be in a later slide of this presentation. Another thing that we're doing is, we know that having technical experts in the room, some of whom have their own lived experiences of housing instability and insecurity, it's not the same as having everybody in the same decision-making room. We have been, during each meeting, spending part of our time together reading comments of residents and kind of having that as a grounding practice, so that they're thinking about, like, what is actually happening, what are people experiencing, instead of many of us tend to get very technocratic and pulled away from the reality of the experience. So thank you for the question. I hope that answers some of it.
It does, I appreciate the reflection that we may have the opportunity to go back and to just make sure that we heard what they said.
Yep.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Vento.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief, and I don't need a response to this tonight. It's just more something for staff to kind of mull around and consider. And the 2023 legislature handed us a huge platter of issues to address. Transit, housing, our regional parks, water. And I'm just wondering, and we don't need to get into the weeds tonight, but I'm just wondering if there needs to be a conversation about if and how we might engage legislators and/or their staff in part of this discussion so that we make sure that we're on the right page. We've made an application for that housing grant, and I think we want to make sure that we're headed in the right direction once we get it and we don't get caught up, off guard down the road. So I think it would be worthwhile to consider how we engage with policymakers at the state level.
Thank you, Councilmember Vento. Great suggestion. I think Director Barajas wants to comment, please.
Mr. Chair, council members, actually very timely. We were just meeting with legislators this morning to talk about their housing, the chair of the housing committee, to talk about their housing goals for the upcoming session, talk about legislation they've just passed. And we met with them not that long ago with Terri as well to talk about some of the tenant protection things and the new housing rent assistance program as well, working through feedback on that and also hearing from our legislators this morning what was important to them for housing and where we might align and where we might not align on those items. So based on direction we've heard from you. So it is a regular part of our conversations. We certainly take the requests of the legislators at their schedules, which can be very busy, especially in the off season when they're trying to prepare for the next session, but certainly make ourselves available and regularly are in conversation with them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Vento. Further discussion at this point? Great. Ms. Lovelace.
Chair and to Councilmember Johnson, sorry, you asked a couple of different questions and I got one
Thank
through,
you.
but another one is that our technical advisory group is closed. We're trying to keep it a space where people can bring their full experiences there and kind of feel safe to say something that's not necessarily tied to their employer in a super public way. So although many of them, represent a place where they currently work, we don't want them to feel like that's the only thing that they can say and that it's recorded for the record in that point. We've also spent a good amount of time sort of building trust among all of the technical advisory group members so that they feel comfortable, like really grappling with the issues that way. We've been doing in-person and hybrid. So.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I
Councilmember
think
Chen.
that's great. Everybody will give and get what needs to be gotten, I guess is how I'd like to say it. And then just two, if there is a way, and I know you're busy, and I know we're short-handed at the council, but just again to know at least not even the person, but just what entities are in the group, so that I think it's good for policymakers to be able to explain the process to others, there's just so much good work you're doing, and I guess I'm just trying to help the process and even thank people along the way after they've done some good work in my district. And I'm sure you guys would all want to do the same. So we can be supportive of you.
Yeah. Thanks, and thanks, Ms. Lovelace, for circling back. I apologize for moving on without getting your questions just answered. Further discussion, Councilmember Chambliss.
Yeah, I just wanted to tie in what Councilmember Judy Johnson said. I know since I've been on council, we've often talked about our interest in working with our local stakeholders. And getting that information ties into what council members have said that they wanted.
Great, thank you, excellent point. Further discussion? Ms. Lovelace.
Thank you. We also have been doing a lot of city staff engagement more recently. We're always talking with cities as part of the nature of our work, but we held an event in late September, invited, I think, more than 20 different cities and their staff to come speak about what we're thinking about changing in policy, where our focus has been, what we've heard in community engagement so far. And I think we had about 12 cities represented at our meeting. One thing we heard loud and clear is like, we need technical support and funding. And one of the questions that we asked at the beginning of the session, just to get conversation going, is, do you have a spending plan for your Metro sales tax housing funds? So just getting them thinking about like, what are their next actions going to be was part of that. We also heard loud and clear that people who oppose the development of either multifamily or affordable housing are one of their largest barriers currently. That they often have the technical expertise, they have interest from developers to build. Frequently, they're less worried about having the funding at this point, but most concerned about huge political blowback as one of the major things keeping them from building more housing. They all talked about inflation and how that has made the development space just more difficult in general. Several, and this was a big surprise to me, is that several of them were like, we are so glad that the council keeps us honest and sets like hard rules that we have to follow, because we can just say, the council says, if we want to be consistent, we need to do this. And I was like, oh, you like us being the bad guys sometimes? Like, so that was kind of a pleasant surprise. Made and deepened some connections where they'd rather have us come out and tell their elected officials an unpopular opinion about the need for affordable housing than having them themselves do it all the time. We also heard that a number of bedrooms is especially important for communities that are experiencing a large influx of immigrants and new Minnesotans. Many different communities are saying, like, for the first time, we're really having to push developers to include more 3-bedroom units. We know it's difficult to make it pencil in multifamily, so we're also looking at ways to build townhomes and things like that. So really engaged and focused staff. We got a little bit of feedback on things relating to affordability limits. Many communities were super interested in the idea of more localized affordability, thinking about how it met the needs specifically of their community. We also talked a little bit about land guided for affordable housing, and it usually led back to like, we're glad there's a line that we, like can tell people that we don't want to cross. We want to remain consistent with regional housing policy. So yeah, I'll share with you some quotes if you're interested. The rental unit sizes don't necessarily accommodate larger household needs, particularly those of immigrant communities. New funding sources for units affordable at 30% AMI and below is essential. Unfortunately, development incentives and other local funding sources can only go so far. Identifying and receiving funding to build housing at those deeper affordability levels is a high priority in our community. Oops, sorry. You got a quick preview.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah,
Do you have more quotes?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
I thought you were done.
Those were the best quotes. Go ahead.
So, Mr. Chair, so this is right on, and this is not new, because you could go, recession has made our jobs harder. It's there's always something going on. It's never easy to do this, but I appreciate that you're extracting this. Yes, it is very easy for people to make the Met Council the bad guy. I have done that, and in
It's a
my
regional
former roles.
pastime.
Yeah, and yet, I think I just know in my 20-some years of doing this at the council, Plymouth Council, I just said, this is all good work. I tried to really change the narrative, and it's not easy to do, let me tell you. But I appreciate you asking these questions or getting this kind of information, and also because there's a trust thing going on there, which I appreciate. And then, as far as city staff engagement, did you pick up the urban and then the inner suburban and so you got people from all over the place that are, okay, great.
And for those where we're feeling a little bit light, we're planning to do some follow-up phone calls.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Ms. Lovelace.
Kind of getting back to an earlier question from Councilmember Carter, this is one way that we're connecting what we're hearing in resident engagement, what we're hearing from city staff, what we're hearing from technical experts to our policy and to our funding, is like creating an engagement theme, naming that, very clearly defining it, and then aligning it with things that we have either control over in partnership with other levels of government or complete ownership as the council. So what I would love to get your feedback on related to this slide is what are we best, like suited to tackle more or less on our own? Which ones are we definitely need to work in community? I would say that safety is one that has not historically been within the control of the council. And the definition of safety, we're holding pretty broad. That's both like toxic chemicals like lead paint within the environment of the home, not just like criminal actions of people around someone's home. It was brought up a lot how important maintenance was and attention of property management to the needs of residents on many different occasions with many different groups. And I don't think necessarily that our policy priorities currently in Thrive 2040 reflect that. So that's kind of a newer area of focus and something that we're hearing a lot on. Yeah, so this is what we're thinking ahead of time. So proximity, making sure that people have access to things near their home. You might think of this one landing a little bit more under land use. Dignity, we know that ownership is important, but often the thing that people really want is autonomy and a base standard of living that meets their needs. Proximity, we already talked about. Within, connected is sort of related to feeling connected in community, those social needs that are mentioned in statute as part of the regional development guide. Feeling welcome. Let's see, what else? Safety, we just talked about, and autonomy. People want to be able to choose their housing type and their location. Another quote we have under autonomy is that ownership is freedom, staying as long as you want, can build it how I want, could have as many people as I want over and feel free and relaxed, needing somewhere where there's 24-hour support available, but also wanting to be as independent as possible. That comment is from someone living with disabilities.
Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you. One of the discussions that came up in the housing work group and something that I brought up a few times is not, along with anti-displacement and affordable housing, is the ability to attain wealth. And with that, it's not just affordability, but it's also income. Because if you have enough income to handle increased property values, then you can benefit from the equity just like everybody else. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times I don't hear that when we're talking about affordability. Affordability is one part of the whole wealth picture. And we tend to just zoom in on affordability, and we're missing the fact that everybody should be able to have those home standards, and they should also be able to benefit like everyone else in terms of gaining wealth, because they can obtain a job that will allow them to live through comfortably their price increases, whether it be rent or whether it be home ownership, but especially with home ownership as it relates to building wealth.
Thank you, Councilmember. Yeah, Councilmember Carter.
I really appreciate the themes and know that there's so much inside each one of these that as you use it as an engagement theme, it's necessary to make sure that we're explaining what we consider these themes to be about and hearing and placing, together with the input that we're receiving, either from residents or from community partners or jurisdictional staff, making certain that what they're thinking of is here. You know, as Councilmember Chambliss just mentioned, the anti-displacement, the affordability, you know, I can think of that inside connected, I can think of it inside proximity. There may be other places that people will talk about that. And so it's really necessary that we not get hung up on what the themes are and what they mean to us, but that we really flesh them out and make certain that it's known, you know, where we're capturing that information. I really like seeing it in this way, you know, the policy focus, the theme itself, and the funding commitment or possibilities that it's attached to, but I don't necessarily think of it all in this way. So I'm being guided to think in a certain way, but also cognizant and aware of the fact that I don't think in these lines, and so it's important for us to just be flexible, to be able to capture, and to also be able to communicate how we're capturing the theme, however it's brought to us. And what's missing, you know, is there something that's important that's not in a highlighted green to blue, to be able to take that in. And even if it means, you know, we're creating another theme, I hope I'm not blaspheming right here, but, you know, if it's necessary to do so, to bring that back to us as well. I'd like to know, what aren't we capturing, you know, in the minds of those that we're talking about?
Great. Great points, Committee Members. Councilmember Johnson.
Hilary, you had mentioned that we didn't capture this, can't remember your exact word, as much, that's a poor way of saying it, in the 2040 plan, but we know we're getting more robust feedback. So can you just point to one or two things in the 2040 plan that would have sort of, with hindsight, been a miss for us? Just as an example for reference for us.
Ms. Lovelace.
Thank you for that question, Chair, Councilmember Johnson. When I read the 2040 plan, specifically the housing policy plan, I see a lot of focus on how do we solve the problem and less focus on what are our residents experiencing. And I think safety might have been one of those things that we kind of missed, both because needs change over time, and also because if we're not talking to residents and asking them what's important, we won't catch everything. So, so I see both a connection to lived experience and, yeah, a connection to lived experience is more or less missing. So I think it doesn't have to look exactly like this, but having some form of accountability within the written document showing that, like, this is what we heard and this is how we are responding is really important.
And Mr. Chair, one more quick, and Hilary, are we getting again, well-rounded lived experience? There's not one linear lived experience, but we're getting a bunch of lived experience, right? So we've got a wider, okay, good. And I would just say, however we can connect it to policy and funding within the parameters of our authorization, our enabling from the legislature, great. And I think that it's a shared responsibility with all of the partners to be addressing these. And if we're calling them out, at least saying, you know, we might not own the biggest share of this or any share of this, but, you know, we would expect that in partnership, these things would be showing up, whether it be through our grants and our scoring and all the things. So if what I'm saying is where you're tracking, I'm with you. Yeah.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the context of all of the new money for housing that was approved this year, our livable communities programs are a small piece of the overall, a much smaller piece of the overall picture than they have been in the past. So I think it's important to look at things in partnership as opposed to, this is our money, and if you want our money, you have to, you know, because they can just ignore us now.
Councilmember, I think that's an excellent point. And for me, that really puts some emphasis then on the policy side of this framework. And so it's not about if you want these few dollars, this is the policy and that's our role to establish it. And so I'm glad that you brought that point up. And then I'll recognize Councilmember Chambliss in a minute. But the one thing I'm really interested in is the safety piece. And Ms. Lovelace, I can hear you say that, you know, I've heard you, I think, that this is, we'll have more emphasis on this and on the policy side as well. I feel like we do have as the regional planning agency, some authority, some teeth here to address safety more than just sort of the maintenance or code issues or inspection, things like that. But, you know, it seems more on the funding side, you were giving ourselves sort of hints about what the policy side should look like, right? What the design looks like, eyes on the street, you know, secure homes, things like that. So I just think there's a lot of opportunity there. Councilmember Chambliss.
Just tying into what you're mentioning about authority, and I don't know if you plan on getting to this, but the housing statute that we are working off of and our official authority of control, you know. I think we need to revisit that and have some experts help us interpret that statute in terms of what we have control over. Because if we keep, sometimes you hear one thing over and over again, and it's not the whole picture. So.
Right. No, I think that's an excellent point, and we should probably have that in front of us. This isn't a system, right? We don't do a housing systems plan like we do with our other policy plans. So it is sort of a different beast here, and so maybe keeping the statute in front of us would be helpful. I think that's an excellent suggestion.
Mr. Chair, and that's what I was speaking to earlier is, you know, the enabling legislation, what's our authority? Because we all know if we get out of bounds, we get slapped. And that's understandable. But, you know, within that, again, it's the partners and partnerships who owns it. We all have a piece of it in the plan, but then who really owns it when we're implementing? And again, it can be many. And so I think we just have to approach it. I don't know. I haven't been around for the 50-some years here at Met Council, but approach it differently in the 2050 plan is a partner. And yes, about the extra money. It's going to be a game changer. So we'll see how it impacts everybody.
Thank you. Yeah, well said. Ms. Lovelace, are you getting what you need out of this conversation? Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Oh,
So the questions that I have for you, you kind of were jumping into the first one. How would you apply engagement themes to our policies? The second one, are there any specific topics you would like the technical advisory group to provide some detailed insight on? Like, is there like a specific question you really wanted to ask them or some area of housing policy planning that you want them to focus on more? And what information in the future should I bring to you that helps you make the best policy decision? Those are my questions.
Councilmember Dolkar.
For a question, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for asking those questions. I think for me, the one that I'm sitting on question number 2 is the displacement or anti-displacement. I think that has shown up in transportation, it's shown up today too. And I think about even the, you know, the voting that we just did around the LHI, I think that was what the term is. Like, I am wondering how, what type of policies do you need to have, and maybe not all Met Council, but state legislature, local government, county level, that really stops some type of displacement, not to completely stop any sort of affordable housing or new housing or economic, because it's a fine balance between the two. But at the same time, recognizing, like, when you do build out, how do you make sure people are not displaced? Because then you push them further and further out. And I'm not sure as the Twin Cities gets built out, like where they would go next. Because, you know, there was a trend of you either move to really inner city or you move to in the suburban area. As those places become unaffordable, like, I don't know where people are moving next to. So I think that's the one question I'm sitting with.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Dolkar. Further responses from Ms. Lovelace? Yeah, Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, Councilmember Wolf then. Okay, so my apologies. Please, Councilmember Wolf. I did have a cue, but I just kind of messed it up. So go for it.
Okay. From the 2040 plan, what worked and what doesn't is important to look at. And also, does it matter that in our HRA, the Metro HRA, we're not connected to the county service providers in the same way that some of the other county HRAs are? You know? And is there room for improving that coordination to make sure that services and housing, if necessary, are going together?
Thank you. Further responses to the question, and my apologies, Councilmember Carter. And Sue, are you?
I didn't mind being skipped over because.
Sorry.
I
try so hard.
My thinking is always as mature as I wanted to be when I raised my hand. And so I'll just put this out here. I think about the things that we lament in communities and the whole subject of safety becoming so primary right now, I think is a factor of our focus on the buildings and not as much on the community. So as we talk about being close to work, being close to amenities and services, all of that is important to me. And I think about children going out to play a lot. And so when we're talking about affordable housing for families, or, you know, for anyone really, I think about access to the outdoors and safe access to the outdoors. And so as we create direction for funding the construction of homes in our region, regardless of where they are, you know, if they are in more open communities or if they're in tight urban environments, I always want to know that we're thinking about those aspects around safety, like lighting and pathways and, you know, face fronting in the street, things of that sort, but also that we're thinking about play, you know, movement, safe movement around that housing that encourages being in the outdoors and safe in the outdoors and doing so in a connected way. I don't have the design to go with all of that, but I think it's all very important and just want to make sure that as we're making decisions about our policy, we're focusing in on that safe play, being in the outdoors and being connected.
Further responses, Councilmember Bento.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. The phrases that keep rattling through my head are in partnership and a call to community with a capital C in community. Today I happened, by chance, not by design, to go by 3 separate settings that in 2 cases serve and house the homeless, and in the 3rd case provide supportive services to the homeless. And to say that I was mortified and shattered by what I saw is an understatement. And I talked about this last week at the Committee of the Whole, and I won't go into it again, but there needs to be a call to community about housing on as large a scope as we can possibly do. And it's got to call all of the players to the table. And I think a big part of getting them to the table and keeping them at the table, all of us to get, and when I say them, it's the royal them, is data. And so whatever we can do to come up with data that really spells out the problems, and to the same extent, personal individual stories, I think it will be really, really beneficial. I was really struck by the tributes I heard to former First Lady Rosalind Carter yesterday and today. And her work on mental health was remarkable, but I think we've, as a society, collectively dropped the ball. And I think we should be ashamed of ourselves, and I think it contributes a lot to the many struggles we're facing as it relates to all of this. So if we could just somehow, and it doesn't have to be we, the Met Council, I don't care if it's the governor or a bunch of church leaders, I don't care who it is, but we gotta get to the table, and we gotta get to the table fast, because it's getting uglier and sadder and more tragic by the minute.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So to the questions, how would you apply engagement themes to our policies? I think we've talked about that a little bit. Topics you'd be interested in the technical advisory group. So representing District 1, I've got some bigger cities and some very small cities. So we talked a lot about a lot of aspects tonight, but there's a lot of different things that are taking place in the suburbs. So it's really all about funding. It's really all about support. It's really all about a chance to even get the financing or funding or support. Otherwise, they don't apply. So that's big. It's not even at the level of, how far will it be from the playground? Although the communities I represent in my 20 years, they really put that stuff through the ringer, because that's part of all of the review of the proposal that's coming forward. It goes through Park and Rec and Police and Fire and Public Works, and all the directors are looking at that plan to make sure that the people who live there and all of the needs that have to be met are moving forward in the right direction, working very hard with that developer. But I'd like to know things that are coming from communities that some of us represent that are more far-flung. And then what information helps you make the best decision on a policy direction? I think that when we can, and it's been said, when we can have data and information, that, data helps me inform. And certainly the stories and all that are very important. But we, even with all the new money coming in for housing, it is just not enough. So to your point, Councilmember Chambliss, and I've said this before, unless we get an economy that's working for everybody, we're just sanding down the edges of really what are rough lives for people. And the trade-offs that Councilmember Dolkar mentioned when it comes to transit, housing, all of the trade-offs that come in. So I'm just letting you know kind of my mindset is just making sure that when we are gathering that input, it's all of the various things that might be foreign to some communities, because that is not their reality every day, vice versa, and then the data.
Cool, thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Bento informed me she asked to leave. Did you want to add anything before you go? Okay.
I just was apologizing.
No, thank you. No, appreciate your participation.
Guilt.
Councilmember Lee.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'd like to second Councilmember Dolkar's comments on displacement. I heard that there's a new place on Grand Avenue in St. Paul, and they're charging for these apartments $3,000 a month for 3 bedrooms, and I think it just boggles my mind. And so I think we gotta make sure that we help keep our cities affordable for everyone.
Thank you, Councilmember Lee. Ms. Lovelace, just to go through the questions really quickly, and a couple of thoughts of my own. One on the question one, how to apply the engagement themes. The one that just is looming at me is safety, just because we've been talking about it quite a bit. Councilmember Carter, I think, making an excellent point that it's kind of an issue of the hour, right? And in safety, then within housing policy, it's not just the physical safety or the physical safety of the housing or the conditions around the housing. But then there's things like the disparate impacts of climate change, for example, or of natural disasters or catastrophes, and how does that relate to our housing policy, and how can we be strengthening that kind of response to the second one? And I just love how much I heard, I think many council members tonight, and I would put it under the umbrella of wealth building, right? And and that's what I would like the tag to kind of weigh in on, and you may help us do some thinking around that. We talk about anti-displacement quite a bit, which I think is important, and some people can hear that as we don't want investment in these areas where we're trying to discourage displacement. I would say that another response, we want to build wealth so that as more investment comes in, those who are already living there and have committed to the area can benefit from that. Also, Oh, geez, I knew this was gonna happen. I have all these great notes and I can't read my own writing. So I'll skip that one for right now. Go to the third question about what helps make best decisions. And I had the note already and I've heard it here and I'm just really gratified. Data, right? So just to lift that up. And then also to echo what Councilmember Wolf, I had, my notes said track record, right? But really, looking back in the 2040 plan, what worked, what did, the analysis, from what's happened before. Oh, the other thing, and I actually read it, I would love to hear the tag, some thinking there's around some of the barriers that you raised. There's the NIMBY, which is, very shorthand and I think can mean really different things in different contexts. And so I know there are other barriers as well, but just what the tag might be thinking to address those kinds of barriers. And cool. So those are my answers. Oh, and then that there's space, and I didn't know where to put this here, but for bold action, bold innovation, right? And we don't have housing models that are really serving our region. And so we can, so here's an opportunity to embed within our housing policy documents something that would encourage innovation within our existing model. Those are my, yeah, Councilmember Dolkar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since everybody's talking about data, for question number 3, I think it would be interesting, so tying back to the previous presentation from Terri about naturally occurring affordable housing. So looking, some type of mapping of like, where do we have existing affordable housing that needs to be preserved? Because I can see myself using that data as a policy to guide it. And then same thing on that affordable housing piece is the rental, like renter unit, like how many, and this is granular data, like, it could be done by counties or you do it by cities or within cities, the different communities. It's like, there are certain parts of the metro area that is heavily renters. And so what is like our policy or local policy and partnership of like Met Council funding looks like in those areas that we know are naturally where most renters live. And that also I can see it guide our transit policies.
Great, thank you, excellent points. Councilmember Carter and then Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about earlier, or I did ask about earlier in the earlier presentation, what percentage of applications we had for the LHIA funding focused on 30% affordable home ownership. And I know that the response I got back was that in the last couple of rounds, we haven't seen that. I would like to know what we can do about that, because as a part of wealth building, clearly home ownership is a strategy that comes to us, typically at the higher rungs of that ladder. And I do believe that we have opportunity to investigate and perhaps invest in that lower level. So I'd like to know, how we can ask the question about and flesh out information that will help us get further down on that ladder.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you. And to Councilmember Dolkar's point, this is why I keep asking not only the, naturally occurring affordable housing, which there is a lot of data on that. So Greater Minnesota Housing Fund's been working on that. Family Housing Fund's been working on that. Everybody's got a lot of data around that. I said, but the hard part about that too is how do you protect it? And this too then, and I've said this and I'm gonna keep saying it until I figure out how we can get our hands around this one, our head around this one, and that's the corporate entities that are coming in and buying up the affordable housing, cash, turning it into a portfolio, and then it's rental. And it's privately owned. There's nothing we can do. And I cite again the case in North Minneapolis when one of them went upside down or got in trouble and had to sell them off. And I'm like, man, government should have been ready to step in and snatch those things up in the interim until we could get them back on the, and I don't know how we get that number, because I know some communities make rental licensing a thing, some don't. But I have a huge feeling that over the past 20 years, that has been a big impact on why we don't have enough affordable housing. So if you want to, hit the big data points, that's one that I don't think we have. And second of all, to Councilmember Carter's point, the 30 AMI is really important. I think it's very, very important everywhere, but I would also say let's get 30% stabilized, and then let's work so that they can save up and get into a home ownership program if that's for them, because even at 50 or 80% AMI, it is very hard, and that's why you're seeing those come in, because they can make it work even with great subsidies. So I'm not saying we shouldn't have a program, but because of the limited funds and resources and because of what's happening in the marketplace, we have to be very strategic with the data to figure out how do we zoom in and have the greatest impact with local partners instead of, we know the problems are many, but we have to focus in where we can have that greatest impact, would be my focus when you're looking for policy direction.
Thanks, Councilmember Carter.
I really appreciate that and understand that that would be a limitation for us and a reason we can be more impactful at the higher rung. And at the same time, I think the very partners that you were pointing to, those corporate partners, those in financing are natural partners for us, and that there are partnerships in development with whom we can align our resources to work even as we look at that lower rung. So thank you for not ruling it out. We want to continue to focus where we can make the greatest difference, and also investigate how together in partnership with others, we can go deeper. Because I think there are folks out there who are looking for us in that regard.
I think those are great points. Thanks, council members. And it's, kind of hits on both sides of policy and the funding side as well. And really, when Councilmember Johnson was just speaking, and I know we feel a lot alike about this, and so, but it really lifted up for me, and maybe this goes to the second question about what TAG can provide more insight on, but it is in the response, right? The ability to respond, and our policies, and I'm not public policy in general doesn't encourage a rapid response, right? When we need to respond rapidly, it kind of disrupts the system in big ways. And so at a policy level, and then how it would feed into funding, what would a more rapid response? What would readiness look like? What would adaptability look like? Cool. Anything else? Ms. Lovelace, anything else you're looking for from us tonight?
Thank you for the very thorough feedback tonight. I mean, seriously, thank you. This was a treasure trove.
Great.
Thanks for your hard work.
Yeah, thanks for asking us. We appreciate it. Cool. Is that the end of your, okay, cool. The final item, and it looks like it's you, Director Barajas, that's presenting on it.
We can go at the next meeting.
Thank you. I have something to be thankful for.
My pleasure.
Committee members, anything else?
She wants us listening.
Right. Well, this was such a good conversation tonight. And I think so worthwhile, and I think it was great for to inform staff work as well. Michelle, anything for us?
No, I have nothing.
Okay. Well, seeing no further business before this committee, we're adjourned.